This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation, welcome to the debut episode of Making Towns with Friends here on the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed. My name is Steve Williams, and every episode on this new show we will have a guest on to discuss whatever topic my warped mind can come up with. And we have a doozy today, as we will be going back in time and putting on our fantasy booking caps to discuss our picks for Money in the Bank candidates going all the way back to the first WrestleMania back in 1985. And joining me here on this maiden voyage is the host of the PW Torch Deep Dive, as well as co-host of the East Coast Cast, a VIP section with that ne'er-do-well Travis Bryant. I am here with Rich Fann. Rich, how are you tonight, man?
I'm pretty good. I'm enjoying weather being a lot better than it has been in months here in Pittsburgh. So this will be a nice little fun experiment. And as I told you in the lead up to this, I have a spreadsheet ready, and hopefully folks appreciate the work we put into this.
Yes, I've been sitting on this idea for a long time, and you being a man who specializes in deep dives, I knew you would be perfect for this idea.
My wife was very angry at me as I had little notes. We went out to dinner last night and I had little notes on last minute things, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Don't worry about it. It's fine."
All right, guys. So here's a basic outline of what we're doing here. We're going back in time to the date of each WrestleMania, and we are picking a Money in the Bank winner out of someone who is on the WWF/E roster at that time. The example I used in explaining this to Rich is that Randy Savage would be ineligible for WrestleMania 1 because he did not debut in the company until June of 1985. So it has to be somebody who was already being used. Excuse me. If we do pull somebody off the card, we're going to go in for a bit about how that affects the card, some butterfly effect type stuff, and then we'll talk for a little bit about possible cash-in scenarios for our pick. So, Rich, you are our guest here this week. Who would you pick for the Money in the Bank winner at the first WrestleMania?
Okay, so this one, when I thought about the first WrestleMania, especially when you gave me the Savage example, that would have been my first person right off the bat. But since I couldn't use him, I figured I would go with bigger heel at the time, got put in a main event spot anyway. But now with the Money in the Bank, I think you have a lot more options to work with, and that is Roddy Piper.
Roddy Piper, also my first pick.
Excellent. And so we're taking him out of the Hogan and Mr. T. Piper Orndorff match, which obviously is a big name in terms of notoriety. For me, from a booking standpoint, I feel like Piper could probably step out of that and then be replaced easily by either the Iron Sheik or insert heel here, because you really don't, or even King Kong Bundy, if you really wanted to kind of move things up a little bit, have him show up as the guest tag partner after having destroyed SG Jones the second match of the card.
All right, do you have a time frame in mind as to when Piper would cash in?
Well, I'm sticking with, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because of the fact that there's the year rule with most Money in the Banks. And in 1985, the only other pay-per-view would have been the Wrestling Classic. I would have, and this is where it gets fun because this is where people would figure out how much of a jerk he is. Piper already lost against Hogan by disqualification at the Wrestling Classic. I would have him cash in after the disqualification and get the pinfall.
Oh, you are taking my Dolph Ziggler 2013 idea. I love it. All right, my scenario. Keep in mind, the Rock and Wrestling thing was in full swing at this time. So much so that Piper versus Hogan actually happened on MTV a month before the first WrestleMania. Now, because of that, I don't think it's necessarily pertinent to have Piper in that main event spot mixing up with Hogan. Fans have already seen that. I think he could be pulled out, and you could even replace him with Ace Orton in that position. What I would have done is you already have the big heat match they had on MTV February 18th. Have him win the Money in the Bank at Mania, and then with all those eyes on him, you'd have to do a little smoke and mirrors to get some of the people out of the way, because there were so many people involved in the main event of WrestleMania. I'd say do something to hurt Mr. T to get him out, and then maybe even like bump Liberace. But then have Piper cash in on Hogan after the main event of WrestleMania that same night, and have him take the title in front of that hot crowd, and then build to another rematch on MTV maybe that summer to pop a big rating and bring an even more casual fan to now have seen the nefarious heel take one on their hero, and just bring more people in for that rematch.
Oh, wow, I like that. That's pretty fun. And that kind of brings in the cable era a lot sooner than it actually came.
Yes, I mean, the station was growing, WWF was growing. I think they were great partners at that time. Or maybe even you could do the first match on an early Saturday night's main event. You could do a run where Hogan has to go through Orton, has to go through Orndorff, and then he finally gets Piper.
Wow. And that's a nice little gauntlet he'd have to go through.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of that scenario. If you want me, you have to go through all my toadies type thing. All right, man. So moving on to WrestleMania 2, April of 1986. Who do you have as our Money in the Bank winner?
Well, I am going about, if I'm doing the math right, I want to say almost 22 years ahead of schedule for this gentleman, but Terry Funk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Terry Funk is in originally the Haas Funk and Terry Funk versus JYD and Tito Santana match. In my scenario, the sociopath from Texas gets the Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 2, and then I like the dichotomy of like going right before things. Saturday night's main event 9, which was taped in December of '86, he would show up after the steel cage match with Paul Orndorff and use the cattle brand on Hogan as they're raising well, that's old school. That wouldn't have been the case. That's the big blue ones. So yes. As Hogan's flexing in the ring, and almost similar to nowadays where they do the you cut to the logo, they put up the WWF logo, and from the ring, he tears himself out of the fabric of the ring, stabs him with the cattle brand, and is now the WWF champion.
My goodness. I like the idea of the cage being up and baby faces not being able to run in to make the save.
And everyone's just in horror as he whips Hogan, whips the tar out of him after the match and just is relentless, beating him mercilessly with his own title belt. Or now his new title belt.
That sense of foreboding doom as the Billy Jack Haynes and Tito Santana types are struggling to make it in, but the Deca in their veins does not allow them the dexterity to make it over the top in time.
Yes, and I picked that one specifically because it's in Hartford, Connecticut. So it's enough where people are going to scream and shriek and lose their minds, but not enough because I also considered the pre-Mania in Detroit, Michigan at the Joe Louis Arena, and that might have been a little bit too close to starting a riot.
Yes, those hardworking union guys wouldn't stand for that nonsense. Now, I like that because realistically, Terry and Dory against JYD and was it Tito?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't, that's an inconsequential match on a show that has approximately 53 matches. You could lose that and give Clara Peller 5 more minutes. And even though it was one of the better matches on the show, it would not have been missed terribly.
Yeah, and I felt like by doing that, by giving them that opportunity, especially as you see some of the logic with my later picks, it's the only time I could have imagined Terry Funk getting a prominent role in WWF, and him departing for WCW and doing the same thing with Ric Flair would have been even more exacerbated / amazing.
Yes. The one downside of that is if Terry Funk gets a WWF title run, we may lose him in Over the Top or Roadhouse or those type movies.
Now, I think, just like with Hogan as champion when he did the A-Team and all those other shows, that'd be even better for him because Vince could then piggyback, especially if he'd had, let's say, your scenario, if he just had a Money in the Bank cash-in on MTV, why wouldn't he want the champ to talk about how much of a tough guy he is. Like, he wished someone had Money in the Bank, so they'd come onto the set over the top to take him on.
Nice. All right. My pick is actually the guy who did get the big summer program with Hulk Hogan in 1986, and I went with Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. With the idea that everything else being the same, he is a babyface going into that spring. He is Hogan's buddy, but there's this tension because he's been a real bastard in the past. But now he's Hulk Hogan's friend, and Hogan's friends already at this point do have a history of turning on him. So Hogan's always kind of looking over his shoulder. Orndorff wants that prize, but he's acting like they're buddies. You could even do the same scenario of, no, I wasn't going to cash on you, but then I tried to call you at the gym, and you didn't answer my call. So F you, briefcase over the head, taking your belt, 3 pile drivers, done. And it could even be a quickie run because Orndorff clearly was going to have some issues with that nerve damage. They could have done the Orndorff title defense against Hogan at the big event in Toronto and had Hogan regain the title there. So we still get Hogan and Andre at Mania.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
All right, man. 1987, WrestleMania 3. Who do you got?
All right, so this gentleman was already in a match at WrestleMania 3. But I figured this is you're basically taking a bullet for the team. And again, this might be a left field one for you. 1987, another gentleman who may have been a little bit past where he could have been, but I think this gives him that shot in the arm to keep him going and making him relevant. The King Harley Race.
Oh, wow. That is about as left field as you could have possibly gotten there.
I have the image of Harley giving a dude the pile driver and then just saying, screw it, and then giving the greatest headbutt in the history of WWF and probably the one that ends his career sort of off the ladder onto whomever else is in the match.
But it also gives him the opportunity to cut the Starrcade promo, only with the Money in the Bank. Somebody take the damn Money in the Bank.
And then he is great because he still can do the loser, because I have him cashing in at the first Survivor Series. He still can do the match against JYD where it's loser must bow, but he cashes in and makes himself. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. I'm looking at wrong one. I gotta look at Survivor Series. At that point, he would ingratiate himself into the Survivor Series team and being a heel, not tell anyone until the time he's cashing it in that in the middle of Survivor Series, he's eliminating Hogan for the title.
Oh, nice. So for 1987, I went with the first big sacrificial lamb of this journey. I'm taking Randy Savage out of the Steamboat match and doing a Money in the Bank. True, you lose the best pure work rate match of the 80s for WWF, but realistically, WWF wasn't about that. Like, it's something nice they could hang their head on that they had that one great match in the middle of the steroid era. Mm-hmm. But I mean, big picture wise, Steamboat's gone that summer anyway. Savage could use this as a similar springboard to greatness. Now, I would use this as the impetus for... Excuse me, I actually got my timeline completely mixed up when I was fantasy booking this. I get Savage as the respectful babyface challenger, challenging Hogan. Savage still turns babyface. They become friends leading into WrestleMania. Savage announces ahead of time that he's going to cash in, and then there is tomfoolery with the Megabucks. And that is how we get to the title being held up. And Savage, again, wins that tournament at WrestleMania 4. He's the rightful champion, but that question is still there, that can he beat Hogan? And that seed is planted to get us to WrestleMania 5 the next year with the Hogan-Savage best storyline of the 80s still being intact.
Ooh, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, the old, the Tommy Gunn, Rocky Balboa story,
Yeah, he's like, you didn't know me, you just wanted to live through me. Which Rocky ironically he's had three of his proteges say that to him when it wasn't the case.
Rocky is the Hulk Hogan of Philadelphia. All right, 1988 WrestleMania 4. Who do you got?
WrestleMania 4 is one of my favorite WrestleManias because I am a title tournament like mark par excellent. So I decided to go in a weird way. Jake and Rick Rude were in a title tournament opening round draw, which led to a bye, basically, for the person on that side of the bracket. Rick Rude will be the winner of the 1988 Money in the Bank. And with that, Rick has the opportunity to cash in at any time he wants, and so he decides to do it prior to WrestleMania 5.
Very nice, very nice. Rude's on my radar on one of these. I won't spill it just yet. For 1988, at this point, the $1 Million Man himself is in play. So why not let the Money in the Bank with the matching shiny, glittery suit have DiBiase, and they could even work the gimmick into the match, where he pays off the other guys not to climb the ladder and sends Virgil up to get the belt for him. Or the briefcase. He doesn't even take his warm-up, his glittery tracksuit off. Virgil climbs up, gets the briefcase, brings it down to him, and now he's got Money in the Bank. Now, as far as a cash-in goes, this one is probably my loosest one. I would say possibly around the Royal Rumble time, early 1989, and he would be a guy, in my eyes, who would cash in and lose it, just to show the old 80s mantra of money can't buy everything. At the end of the day, he's got to face a real competitor, and he can't buy his way into a world title.
I like it. Now, your theory I have carrying forward. You'll see it in a few years. I have one I'm especially proud of, but we'll get to it. I don't want to jump ahead.
Well, Rich, I am glad you're all in on this idea, my friend.
Oh yeah, this is fun. This is a nice mental exercise. It's akin to one of our other buddies, Josh, is big on the Big Bang Theory, as is Travis. And they have a game where you have to take non-logical steps. Like you take one item and then let the butterfly effect change it so that, okay, all of a sudden we get the first man on the moon like 3 years ago. Because of that, Margaret Thatcher is now the head of Activision.
Right.
How do you and then explain this? And I really like that.
All right, 1989, April 2nd, 1989, WrestleMania 5. Who is your Money in the Bank winner?
All right, this is going to be a gentleman because I don't think WWE was ready for it. And in light of the recent events, I think this would be a great way it'd probably be another thing in the annals of it. Bad News Brown is my winner. Ooh. And he would be removed from the Bad News versus Jim Duggan match. And he would cash in on the, let me make sure I got my years right. This would have been 89. So it would have been the, no, wrong one. It would have been the January 27th, 1990 Saturday Night's main event, which featured Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan versus Mr. Perfect and the Genius.
Yes.
Bad News would cash it in and fail.
Yeah, Bad News is a sleeper guy. He was a big, tough guy who was slowing down at that point. Of course, he started wrestling late. I think he was in his 30s when he debuted. So when he finally got that spotlight, he wasn't as mobile. He couldn't do as much. So his star didn't shine as bright as it possibly could have. But as a character, he was just amazing. And to see him mixed up with those top guys would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I thought it was great because Bad News in that position gives himself the opportunity to be seen in that main event title scene while also not risking, eventually getting, demoted down the road.
It would have been fun, almost like when Lawler wrestled the Snowman in Memphis.
Yes.
He pulled that whole angle of you're ducking me, you're dodging me, I'm sick of it, I'm taking over. And with this briefcase, you never know when I'm coming. It could be a very similar, hopefully without the blatant racial overtones that the Memphis angle ended up taking. With Jerry, my God, Jarrett, just going there. All right, 1989, I am going with Rick Rude in this spot. He's a year later, a year older, a year more seasoned. This pulls him out of the IC title run with the Warrior, which did give Warrior some of his best matches. But I think the fact that he was able to have such good, entertaining matches with Warrior showed he was ready for that kind of run. I would have possibly had him cash in on Hogan after a Zeus run-in. Maybe after the May 1989 Saturday Night's main event, where you get the Zeus debut where he beats down Hogan, you get the Boss Man match with the superplex off the cage, Hogan spent, and then you hear that Rick Rude corny 1989 music, 2 Rude Awakenings, and Bobby Heenan finally has himself a WWF champion. Now, I don't think Rude could. I think you would almost have to get the belt off him before the next WrestleMania so that you could get to Hogan and Warrior. So maybe that would be May of 1989. So I'd say let him run with it through Survivor Series. And then you could still have plenty of time to build to the Ultimate Challenge.
Hey, that works for me, and I think that's a nice little detour on that road.
And on top of that, you could still do Rude versus Warrior at SummerSlam. You take Rude out of the equation shortly after Mania, just like they did, and he can come back for the title that Hogan never gave him the rematch for. He's coming for Warrior now. All right, so that takes us to April 1st, 1990, WrestleMania 6. Rich Fann, who is your Money in the Bank winner?
All right, this is the one I talked about. You did it a couple of years earlier, but now I'm kind of following suit. Hercules versus Earthquake was on this card. Earthquake instead is going to be in the Money in the Bank, win it, and then promptly take a bag full of cash to hand that title to the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase.
The only issue I have with this is that there has been a precedent set that titles cannot change hands via cash deals with the 1988 scandal. So I'm interested to hear what On the Take Tunney has to say about this. But continue, sir.
Okay, so now this is where it gets fun because I'm going with the internal logic of, remember, because of the change I made to the Ted DiBiase, Ted DiBiase, Rick Rude, Jake Roberts draw. He's now in a position where he never had the opportunity to buy the title from Andre. So now this is an older Tunney, and I'm hoping that, that money spends a little freer on him and gives me the opportunity, or at least Ted, to cash it in. And that actually would, similar to Tuesday in Texas, I think, put the title in absentia, because I don't doubt he'd be in a situation where he would win it. And then by the time he cashed it in, Tunney would have ruled that it was an illegal win, and now what do you do with the title?
All I want to know is, has the snake been devenomized?
No comment.
Yes, all my Jack Tunney questions come back to the snake at some point. All right, 1990, you went from Earthquake to Deebs. I am going with Mr. Perfect for WrestleMania 6. As just the logical upstart, that spring he, in real life, went after the Intercontinental title, which became vacant after the Ultimate Challenge. I see Money in the Bank as a viable way for a smaller athletic guy to be able to trip up the Ultimate Warrior, who is the invincible Superman. I mean, when he finally did lose the title to Slaughter, it took Randy Savage hitting him with a spotlight and then breaking the Royal Scepter over his head to do it. So I could see some sleight of hand here. A couple of heels run in on a match. Let's say he's wrestling, I don't know, we'll say Rude. That would actually be perfect because Hennig and Rude have that connection. The Genius is running in, Heenan's running in, there's all this craziness going on. And then Mr. Perfect, perhaps even with, say, flash paper, just blows it up in the Warrior's face, hits a quick perfect plex, 1, 2, 3. You have your perfect WWF champion, and these nerds 30 years later can quit complaining about how Kurt Hennig never got a real world title outside of Minnesota.
I like it, and I like the fact that it puts Perfect in this position where he looks like $1,000,000, and he's got the perfect platform again, pardon the puns, to kind of show his wares as he goes through that summer and winter.
Yeah, he was quick, he was smart, he was agile. This puts him in a spot to use all those tools to beat the big caveman-like warrior. All right, 1991, a time of flux in the company. March 1991, WrestleMania 7. Who is your Money in the Bank?
So for March 1991, this is a situation where I did not have the guts to book the Money in the Bank winner to win the title because of the current situation in the geopolitical landscape. So my winner is the Mountie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my thought on this is the Mountie would play off of what eventually would be Bret Hart's late stage WWE gimmick of the proud Canadian and say he's going to clean up the mess that the Americans started. But that's a little too highbrow for 1991, let alone 91 pro wrestling. So he gets in there and en route to costing Hogan the match against Sergeant Slaughter, allowing Sergeant to retain and then cashing in his Money in the Bank, he gets put in the Atomic Noogie and is easily dispatched with. And now you have this malaise that the Saudi sympathizer is just on the take, and he has the title still, and our hero Hulk Hogan doesn't have a chance, and so that leads to Hogan having to have a rematch either at that subsequent SummerSlam or by way of Saturday Night's Main Event, or because they wouldn't want to do it on the free TV.
Right. For WrestleMania 7, I would have taken the tag titles off the Hart Foundation a bit early. Maybe done that at the Rumble and have Bret Hart kick off his singles run with a surprise Money in the Bank championship in 1991.
Oh my.
Now this gets hairy because you have a babyface champion for most of this time. Hogan has the title through November. They do the quickie things with The Undertaker end of November, beginning of December, and then the title's vacant heading into the Rumble. You had that one Saturday Night's Main Event in February of 1992 with Flair as champion. I would have had Bret Hart challenge in the honorable way there, have him lose via some chicanery with Mr. Perfect, but have him have the classic Ric Flair title defense that we never got. On prime time on Fox. Yeah, it wouldn't have to go the full hour. A good solid 20-25 minute match would have gone a long way in getting Flair over as champion going into Mania, and also establishing Bret Hart as a young upstart that could hang with the established veterans.
Oh, that would be fun. And I think Bret's ability at that age, he doesn't have to worry about too many, what's the right word? Inadequate challengers.
Yes, you saw a lot of that with him on the IC level. He wrestled a lot of bums, but he made it work.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that with this reign, he would have a lot more easier of a time because he could make everyone look like Tom McGee as world champ, and Vince would just be salivating.
Mary Kate, if you're listening, you can slide that tape onto ptbnsongsandfriends@gmail.com. We won't tell anybody about that.
No.
All right, so now April 5th, 1992, WrestleMania 8, Indianapolis, Indiana. Rich, who is our Money in the Bank winner?
Indianapolis, Indiana. This man's going to win. He's going to call his shot, and he's going to do it in a way that I think a lot of people would be freaked out at, and that's because my winner's The Undertaker. And he's going to call his shot to take on Hulk Hogan, or at this point, Bret Hart, at Halloween.
Oh, nice.
So the closest thing they taped at that time would have been Saturday Night's Main Event 31, which was October 27th at the Terre Haute Center in Indiana. So he would face him, and in a 10-minute blitz, basically run through Bret and start the reign of terror as WWE champion.
I like that a lot. I would go with a man who in reality left right after WrestleMania 8, but I see nothing but fun potential here with a Money in the Bank reign of Jake the Snake Roberts in 1992. He had spent the latter half of 1991 just absolutely terrorizing Randy Savage. And even though Savage pretty much handed him his ass at every turn in that feud, what better now? Jake can be sneaky about it. He's got the briefcase. Savage has the champion, and Jake can just use that to taunt him throughout the entire summer before finally taking the belt from him at SummerSlam.
I imagine the match made in heaven, match made in hell wedding party being a lot weirder if Savage had, one of the gifts being the Money in the Bank. And he's like, wait, what? And then getting destroyed by Jake.
Now that was 91. 92 was 92 was Europe. So you still have Savage. In fact, you can even have Jake just disappear from TV, only doing promos. Say, brother, I've got this briefcase. I got all the money in the world. Why would I risk this investment by getting in the ring and possibly getting hurt? And then a few weeks before SummerSlam, just have him bow out completely. You do the Savage Warrior match. You have Flair beat him up afterwards, just like they did. And now as he's hobbling around, you hear "Trust Me," and that music hit. And Jake come up from behind through that crowd at Wembley. A couple of short arm clotheslines, a DDT, and we have a new champion.
That's pretty sweet.
And then you could even, let's see, that's August. October, you could still do the Bret Hart change, have Bret out wrestle Jake, have him tap, and send him on his way.
And off he goes to spin the wheel, make a deal.
That's right. Hanging
with Cheatham, the angry dwarf.
Let's say hanging with Cheatham.
Oh, I love Cheatham. Oh.
And the risk of dynamite decreases about 30% with Jake around. So maybe we don't blow up boats on the beach.
Or maybe they're even crazier as far as the blow-ups.
Perhaps. Maybe Jake is hanging out with Vader in the White Castle of Fear.
Ooh, I listen, I would take that in a second.
Well, imagine a Jake and Vader run as villainous pals.
Yeah, they're like the super villains of 1990s.
Oh man, that's getting me excited for something that will never and could never happen. So I'm just going to move on now to 1993, April 4th, 1993, WrestleMania 9, the parking lot of Caesar's Palace. Who is going to be our Roman Money in the Bank?
Our Roman Money in the Bank will be Razor Ramon.
Nice.
And he will be cashing in at King of the Ring. And he will be basically, while everyone else is talking about Yokozuna and how dangerous he is, he's going to focus on making sure Yokozuna retains against Terry and then tripping him up. Now, I don't think he's, at this point, even nearly coked up enough to get Yoko into a razor's edge. But he could get off the sweetest fallaway slam one's ever seen.
Now, Scott Hall may tragically die trying to get the Yokester in the SOS. My God, what a scenario.
I'm believing in him. I'm believing he's going to have enough pharmaceuticals to get him going in 1993 to make that. And then, of course, one of the first Jim Ross, by gods, will be as he lands.
Now, I picture that happening and the ring just collapsing onto itself. And that is an amazing visual. All right, I'm going with the more traditional pick for WrestleMania 9. I'm going with the Intercontinental Champion, Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
Now, this gets tricky. Again, you have a heel champion for most of that run. So you have Shawn, constantly talking about the Money in the Bank and bragging about it, because 1993 Shawn was so full of himself that he couldn't stop but upping himself constantly. And you get a few teases of him going in on Yoko and then realizing, oh, this is a terrible idea. I should not be doing this. So I think eventually he gets a little full of himself, and we'll just say maybe the Survivor Series showdown. He sees his opportunity, eats a Samoan drop and a bonsai splash, and Yokozuna reigns on as champion.
So you're telling me a super kick can't melt Japanese beams?
Now, this is pre-super kick being a dangerous finisher. This was,
the teardrop suplex. Oh, dear God.
Yeah, there was no way. His vertebrae would exit through his anus if he tried the teardrop on Yokozuna.
And that was Beefy Sean, and even Beefy Sean couldn't pull that off.
Yeah, that was Pancake and Painkiller Sean. In fact, that may be the finish. He tries to sneak up behind and go for the teardrop. Yoko just looks at him like, "What are you doing, man?" And then grabs him in that sweet belly to belly and crushes him, and it's over.
Man, that's amazing.
So, 1994, WrestleMania 20, March 20th, 1994. Who is our Money in the Bank Rich Fann?
1994, Owen Hart is our Money in the Bank.
Confirmed.
But Owen versus Brett still happens.
Oh.
That is not only them settling the family grudge, but that's Owen's plan to get into Money in the Bank. And after winning, Owen does his older brother one better. And after Brett's won the title at WrestleMania, Owen cashes in and is now beating his brother twice in one night, wrestled 3 times in one night, and is now your WWF champion.
I love sneaky Owen Hart. It's one of my favorite runs ever.
I would just want to see Martha, like the look of verklempt, her and Stu. Well, Stu only had one look, really, but just the look on their faces at the sideline as they see Brett celebrating, and then Owen's music plays, and he cashes in, and Brett's screaming no. Martha's doing that one single tear sliding down her cheek, and Stu, and watches as he gets Brett just to go down for the 1, 2, 3. In fact, I would have even say since he beat him in the cage, he'd have him tap to the sharpshooter.
Now, I would forsake Owen versus Brett at Mania. It's an amazing match, one of my all-time favorite openers for sure. But even in the storyline since the time, it didn't make... It was really unnecessary having 2 Rumble winners. And then they had the coin toss. If Luger loses the coin toss, he gets crushed. But if Brett loses, he gets Owen. The whole thing was just a convoluted mess.
Yes.
So I would go ahead and have Brett just straight up win the Rumble and go on to beat Yokozuna, not change that part at all. I would have Owen win his Money in the Bank. Excuse me. Still do a straight up match with Brett. Let's say it would have to be I'll say a Raw between King of the Ring, or between WrestleMania and King of the Ring, or maybe even like a USA Network special, something along those lines. And do the exact same match with the finish of Owen, or excuse me, no, not do the finish. Have Brett actually get the win with the victory roll. But this is not the cash-in. This is just a match just because. So Money in the Bank is still in play. Brett is celebrating because he got the pin on his brother, and then Owen sneaks up behind him while he's celebrating, rolls him up, handful of tights, and that's his cash-in. Even though Brett beat him, Owen still ends up with the belt.
That's amazing. I like it a lot.
It's just the ultimate shitty little brother move. So
I'm telling Mom.
Yeah. It's like, I got the title and y'all never stop me. Ha ha ha. You know? Just nonsense. But then he brings Jim Neidhart in as his healer to help protect him from Brett. You can still do Brett versus Diesel with the idea that Brett has to go through Diesel to get to Owen. That's Owen's stipulation. Owen can defend against Razor at King of the Ring. And by this point, you built up so much animosity, you can still do Owen versus Brett in the cage at SummerSlam and have Brett take his title back.
Oh, that's brilliant.
All right, guys, that is the first 10 fantasy booked Money in the Bank winners. We're going to take a short break and hear about some of the other shows here on the Place to Be Nation feeds. And we will be right back to finish up.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following. Place to Be Nations, JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have over 24 podcasts available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlaceToBeNation.com. We now offer them to you on two great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation Wrestling feed, we dive into topics running the gamut from today's WWE to the glory days of yesteryear and the ins and outs of the territory days. In addition to our full-length shows, we also deliver to you special pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is a veritable treasure trove of great content. Offer tremendous shows covering the land of movies, television, life, comics, and sports, brought to you by the most knowledgeable and insightful folks in the podcast world.
You can find all of these current shows, plus archives of our previous podcasts over the past 8 years as well, by subscribing to our feeds on iTunes. And while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others available at PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth stretch projects and more. Be sure to support our site by using www.PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon while doing your online shopping. And be sure to join us at our forum at Bigelow34.proboards.com for all sorts of wrestling, sports, and pop culture discussion each and every day, where you can make your voice heard. We also want to thank our friends at Bonehead's Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlaceStation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
And welcome back to the second half of Making Towns with Friends. Now let's talk about some of the other shows here on the various Place to Be Nation feeds. Over at the Pop feed, myself and Kelly will be joining you for another new Songs with Friends coming up in the next coming days, as we talk about the fantastic pairing of Lil Wayne and Dina something. She sang Strawberry Wine. Dina Carter. That should be a hoot. Greg and Nick are here with a new Longbook Hunters edition of the Hard Traveling Fanboys, and they are exploring Shazam, the Monster Society of Evil. And they also check out their 3rd anniversary special featuring Jim Ross. Okay, man, rock on. Andrew, and Adam are breaking down where the non-NBA playoff teams are headed in the newest NBA team podcast. The Marvel Age crew is here and moving into the first half of 1970. Ginny and Tim welcome Glenn Butler to the hot and high as hell seat for this month's Talkin' Pop. My God, Rich, if you haven't heard this, there's a lot of edible discussion in this one. It's a hoot. Geek and Sassy couldn't let award season come to an end without the second annual Sassies. So check out what Ginny and Miranda's fans had to say as they officially put a bow on 2018. And a new contest is being held over on Looking Forward, Looking Back. We will be doing a summer movie wager based on how well you think you can predict how this summer's movie releases will do at the domestic box office. What you need to do is pick the top 10 movies in order of how you think they will finish in domestic box office gross. You will also need to include 3 wildcard picks, as well as which movie you think will be the biggest bomb of the summer. And Hellboy's already out, so that is not a possible contender for this. Send your picks to lflbpop@gmail.com. That is lflbpop@gmail.com by Monday, April 22nd. Any movie that is released on or after April 26th is eligible, with the tally ending on Labor Day, September 2nd. The winner of the contest gets to be on a future episode of Laugh in Theater and pick the comedy movie of your choosing. And here on the wrestling feed, Nate Milton and his crew are here to break down WrestleMania 35 on a special edition of Chain Reaction. Chris and Devin popped in with the PTB and WrestleMania 35 reaction show. Now, WrestleMania 35 ended at like 12:30 in the morning. This show was on the feed by 6 a.m.
My goodness.
Yeah, they stayed up and did the Lord's work on that. JT and Chad returned with a new Wrestling Warzone as they finished off 1995 with a discussion about the New Japan versus WCW Starrcade. And we continue our dip into the Where the Big Boys Play vault as Chad and Parv start to look at Starrcade 87. Nick and Greg delivered What If number 2 as they examine a world where CM Punk doesn't leave WWE in 2014. And of course, be sure to check out PlaceToBeNation.com as things are getting back up and running there with plenty of projects and reviews to come. Content will be picking up in the days and weeks ahead. Now, that being said, let's jump back into some hot Money in the Bank action. April 2nd, 1995. Rich, who is your Money in the Bank winner?
Well, pal, I think if we're going to get some national exposure, what better way to do it than to have a Super Bowl champion Money in the Bank winner? And LT will be my Money in the Bank holder. LT and Bam Bam will continue their feud that they started at the Rumble and continue throughout all the media and the weigh-ins, and they will fight each other. The finish of the match being Bam Bam being knocked off the ladder through a table as LT grabs the Money in the Bank trophy and then points just to the sky as he collapses onto himself. Now, this means that you have a opportunity where I don't know where Vince is going to go with it. I personally would have been all about having LT cash it in around SummerSlam and actually beat, if I'm in my internal continuity, that would mean he's beating, he's going to be beating either Owen or a newly recrowned champion, Brett. And that, oh my, that would be fun.
Yeah, I hadn't even had Lawrence Taylor on my radar for this, honestly. But it fits within the confines of what we're doing here. It's perfect. Yeah, that would be fun because Lawrence Taylor, for just having one match, it was one of the better celebrity matches. I would like to see what he could do with a little bit more seasoning under his belt and maybe a little bit more cocaine in his nostrils. I don't know. I can't call it.
Yeah, he's up there for me with D'Angelo Williams in terms of one-shot wonders that you were left wanting more from them as NFL players turned wrestlers.
Absolutely, man. I went with a more traditional pick, and I am putting Sid Vicious as the Money in the Bank winner, as possibly the shittiest of my picks, but it gets us to Sid versus Diesel. In fact, you could go either way with the Mania title win. You could either... I thought it was the right time for Shawn to win in 95. The Diesel thing just wasn't going to work. They were going to force that square peg in the round hole. So you could do Shawn going over Diesel at Mania and have Sid turn on him that summer, building toward either a Shawn babyface recapturing or Brett still ending up champion at the end by beating Sid. In that scenario, you do lose Sid versus Diesel, which may be my favorite pre-Attitude Era title match. But, sacrifices have to be made to wedge in this fictional Money in the Bank.
For me, I looked at it, especially with Sid, I avoided him, and just a little bit of spoilers, at all costs because of the freak accident. The longer I keep him away from heights where he can jump off up on that leg, it's like watching a Hot Tub Time Machine and waiting for the dude's arm to get torn off. I don't want it to happen on my watch.
Now, I do a different, looking at the talent roster of 1995, you put him in there with just the jobberiest of jobbers. You have him in there with Aldo Montoya. And bring in a Smoky Mountain guy, a Jimmy Del Rey, those types. Maybe even debut a Tony Anthony for Money in the Bank, just to have somebody to bump off Sid. I almost said Eddie Gilbert, but he was dearly departed by April 2nd. You have some fun possibilities, and then just have Sid demolish these smaller guys and just casually walk up and grab the briefcase.
If he gave 5 other dudes a powerbomb and just had their carcasses on the ground as he sauntered up the ladder, I cannot fight that.
Or even have Tatanka climb up as his partner, his $1 million corporation stablemate. And then as he's about to grab the briefcase, he makes eye contact with Sid, scurries down sheepishly, and Sid casually walks up and grabs the briefcase.
Yeah, no smoke. No smoke.
None whatsoever. So, going into 1996, the dawning of a new era of the WWF, who do you put as your Money in the Bank winner with the NWO looming?
NWO's looming. In the dawning of the new era, I somehow am in a room with Vince, and he convinces me that it's time to go with the old era. The Ultimate Warrior would be my winner.
Ooh. That is a risky pick.
Yes, so he's talking Destrucity. He's talking Santa Claus. He's talking God knows what else. And he is the man that is now walking around with this Money in the Bank, which he, of course, gets stenciled and all that fun stuff. And as he's going around destroying, at the time it would have been Hunter Hearst Helmsley with Sable, instead at Good Friends, Better Enemies, while Shawn Michaels thinks that he's got it locked down in terms of defeating Diesel, that music hits, clothesline, gorilla press. We have what's old is new again, the Ultimate Warrior as the champion, going all the way into the next WrestleMania, which, if I'm doing my butterfly effect correctly enough, that gives an opportunity at WrestleMania 13, a.k.a. word to Brian Alvarez, that kind of gives the Undertaker an opportunity to finally get that solid Duke over the Warrior.
Nice. I like that booking of the Undertaker as kind of having one foot in each era. He's half New Generation, half Federation era. Have him be the guy to finally put an end to the Federation guys for good. I am going with the hot rookie upstart of Moadib. Ahmed Johnson takes Money in the Bank. Somehow doesn't kill himself or anyone else, being able to freely use ladders.
Bold choice.
It really is. This could butterfly affect 8 other guys, directly and indirectly, with various internal organs being lacerated, thanks to an unsteady trip to the Home Depot. Now, I would have a Thursday Raw Thursday scenario. You have a special summertime Raw with Ahmed Johnson letting Shawn Michaels know ahead of time that he's going to challenge against him. And this one has to be a schmoz. I think you need to protect both guys, so this can be where you debut Farouk.
Nice.
To cost Ahmed his title shot. Now they have a reason to be feuding until the end of time. In fact, I'm pretty sure if these two see each other at a convention tomorrow, it'll be hands on sight. This feud never really ended.
Yeah, it's still going on to this day.
So Ahmed, he gets his moment in the sun, but it's taken away from him by a ruthless Spartacus-looking heel. And then we're off to the races. So, going into 1997, WrestleMania 13, the unlucky 13. Who is your Money in the Bank?
Well, at this one, I thought about going a little crazy, but instead I went slightly crazy. This is a man that Jim Ross will note can jump very high, and that's Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn is my 97 Money in the Bank holder. He removes his match against Flash Funk, who I also considered for this. But instead, Billy will be one of my 3 cash-in failures.
Yeah, I think that you can't have Rockabilly beating the Undertaker, no matter what the circumstances were. And I like that too because that still opens the door for the frustrated mid-carder joining forces with the other frustrated mid-carder. Hey, I even had the briefcase and I still couldn't become champion. Road Dogg, let's be pals and show them what we can do together. Now, for my pick, I am going with the not yet broken Steve Austin.
Ooh.
Now, you lose the Bret Hart match, which is a huge loss and really the only thing that makes that Mania worthwhile besides seeing JC Ice get beat up with a kitchen sink. But I think it's a necessary evil. In the ideal world, Shawn doesn't lose his smile. You do Bret versus Shawn. That frees Austin and various other mid-carders to go after the Money in the Bank. And you have a summer of WWF champion Bret Hart with his anti-American stance being terrorized by Steve Austin in this briefcase at every turn, having to surround himself with the Hart Foundation. And it was the Attitude Era, so non-finishes were a regular occurrence. Steve Austin cashes in on Bret, and you have one of the other Hart guys come in for the DQ and get them out of that and still be able to do the coronation at WrestleMania for Steve Austin. And you could even do the deal where Brett says, all right, that was your one chance. You will never get a title shot at me again, necessitating Austin winning the Rumble.
I like it. I like it a lot.
All right, 1998, WrestleMania 14. Rich,
All right.
If you pick Pete Rose, we might fight.
Okay, no, I picked someone who was he was at the show, but he was a second to another wrestler. And this would be another Tunney, or in this case, it would start moving over to Slaughter. And I think because of the prior ruling with Tunney, Slaughter may feel like his hands were tied, in that the holder for 1998 for me is Kama Mustafa.
Wow.
And he cedes it to The Rock as part of the Nation of Domination.
Yeah, with the Attitude Era, things are a lot looser now. I could see that being a valid transaction, maybe a Rolex for a briefcase type scenario.
Yes. And The Rock does that with a nice Cartier and then cashes it in for his first title. WWF heavyweight title, rather.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea at all. In a roundabout way, we ended up with the same guy because I also had The Rock as the briefcase holder coming out of this. He was just the hot hand at the time. And it's one area where they just neutered Ken Shamrock by having him not be able to get over The Rock that first half of 98.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you do the IC title change at the Rumble. So now Ken Shamrock is your IC champ. That frees up Rocky for this Money in the Bank thing. And I would possibly have him, let's see, I would say around the same time frame, around Survivor Series, he would cash in. I don't know that it would be on Austin. Maybe do a quickie thing with The Undertaker, and then have Rock cash in on him. Because you do want to save Rock and Austin, even though they wrestled on that Raw after Survivor Series. That was such a weird throwaway thing that, yeah, I would keep them separate until WrestleMania 15.
And you could always do the Seth Rollins, where someone is in a singles and you turn it into a triple threat.
Yes.
So that way Austin never gets pinned, but he still loses. If you absolutely were like written into a corner.
Or you could even do, they did the deal at Unforgiven where Undertaker and Kane couldn't pin each other, but they could pin Austin.
Yes.
So you could do the same kind of finish where they both kind of crumble on him. You have no decisive winner. And in the confusion, The Rock comes in and lays Austin out, and he takes the pin.
Oh, that'd be brilliant.
So, heading into 1999, the raging climax of WrestleMania. Because screw kids, right? So, who do you have as your WrestleMania 15 Money in the Bank holder?
Nothing says a little bit of WrestleMania like nepotism. Shane McMahon is my 1999 Money in the Bank holder. Shane O'Mac will, dash his way through, hit that big spot, nearly die as one would. And then Shane is going to wait until the moment. So this would be, if I remember correctly, the McMahon in every corner. Nope, Austin Rock. This is when Austin was all about that evil life. So he's already European champion. So akin to Shawn Michaels when he was in DX, he wants to have both titles. And so he cashes in and turns on Austin. So Austin's finally, thinks he's got the deal with Mankind special guest, wins the title over The Rock. I would have been in Philadelphia for this match. And I would have been treated to Austin celebrating middle fingers in the air and then catching a briefcase to the back of the head when he was asking for a beer. And Shane McMahon is now WWE champion, running into the night with his father with a limo waiting.
The only reason I would challenge this is because Shane had all of 2 or 3 matches under his belt at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not entirely sure he could pull it off just yet. The Mania match was a miracle, but he was in with Sean Waltman, who is a miracle worker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you get out of... Is this like a quickie thing on Raw the next night? Austin corners him and takes him out? Or how long do you have Shane run with this title?
Well, Shane wouldn't have it long. Shane would well, the big thing for Shane is because he's with the family business, he can constantly hide behind folks like Test. He can hide behind some of the pseudo proto corporation folk, and mainly just be the patsy that runs away as Austin tries to harass him, similar to what he did with Rock with the beeper. So, among other people, actually, because he did the beeper thing with a couple of people, but. Eventually, he wouldn't last longer than a pay-per-view with it. He'd buy or maybe 2 in your houses at most.
Austin running through Pete Gas and Rodney is just an amazing thought.
I just imagine like they are in these pristine Connecticut like areas, like they're sitting down at like this yachtsman club, and all of a sudden you hear a monster truck roll up, and he's like terrified, and all of a sudden Austin's just like kicking waiters and I don't want your escargots. And then stunning people left and right. Of course, you'd have to have some of the finest independent workers ready to be taking those stunners. But that's where I'm at with Shane.
You have receding hairline Christopher Daniels taking a stunner in a Banana Republic. All right, now that we've gotten into that, I like it a lot. My winner, Shane is also involved with mine, but I would have Shane wrestling X-Pac, as happened. Triple H turns on X-Pac to join Hill and join the corporation. And then to return the favor later that night, Shane helps Triple H win the Money in the Bank heading into that summer as the corporate Money in the Bank winner. You still have the conflict with Undertaker during his brief run, how they were kind of jockeying for position at the time. And I would still have him cash in doing the whole It's My Time thing around SummerSlam. Maybe not at the show itself, maybe just before, just after. I love this idea of Shane just being so sneaky, and there's all this mayhem going on with this ladder match, and Shane keeps trying to get up there and keeps getting taken out by the Canes of the world before finally they pull enough distraction plays for them to get their new chosen one, Triple H, the title. That does eliminate Triple H and Kane, which won't be missed by anyone. So, yeah, I'm perfectly content with that happening. And you could play off, the whole, I was buried for all that time because my buddies left, but now I have the briefcase and nobody could tell me what to do. I'm calling my shots kind of thing, which is kind of what he did anyway.
Yeah.
So, going into WrestleMania 2000... who is our Money in the Bank winner?
Well, this one is a weird one because I wanted to, again, try to go off the beaten path, give someone an opportunity. Might not have had it. He could be the $1 million shot, and he already had in the future, we'll have a Royal Rumble title shot. Hardcore Holly is my Money in the Bank winner.
If there's a time to do it for Bob Holly, I would argue that 2000 definitely would have been the right time.
Yeah, because he's in the mix. I mean, obviously at the time he would have been in the Hardcore Battle Royal, which great, that's awesome. I think with Shane as special guest referee, Rock beats Triple H still at Backlash 2000, but Hardcore Holly's music plays, and lo and behold, we got ourselves a new champ that is part of the corporation.
All right, now, Rich, we are losing you a little bit, but I think we got that point. For 2000, I would go with the man who was on a hot streak heading into WrestleMania, and that is our Eurocontinental champion, Kurt Angle. He had beaten Val Venus and Eddie Guerrero, I believe. I may have that Intercontinental one. No, it was Val Venus and Chris Jericho heading into Mania. So I would say keep that momentum going. I would have put the title on him around the same time in the fall of 2000. I thought that it was premature to put him on as champion against The Rock at a straight-up one-on-one match at the time. But I would have no qualms at all about a sneaky Kurt Angle taking advantage of a fallen Rock. I would say maybe even the month before in September when he had to wrestle Benoit, Undertaker, and Kane in all that melee, have Kurt Angle ruin the celebration with an angle slam and maybe even an ankle lock to become champion.
That's sweet. I like it. I have Kurt Angle later on. I mean, we're later on. We only have so many left. But I had another idea for Kurt, which kind of works with Redacted and some other folks. But we'll get to it eventually.
All right, man. 2001, the end of an era, as WCW and ECW both ceased operations just before WrestleMania that year. April 1st, 2001, X7, who do you got?
I went kind of with a chalk. I went with Triple H. And the reason behind this one was this was a match where they pretended it didn't exist anyway when it came to Triple H and The Undertaker later on. So we might as well just remove it from the annals legally. Triple H, with the Money in the Bank at that point, is in a great position because he wouldn't want to cash it in right away. I think he would probably call his shot and try to steal some of the limelight from X8 and insert himself into the match without having won the Royal Rumble. So that forces the Royal Rumble winner to pick someone else, which is that I think you can't get more Triple H than that.
Yes. Now, if I could be serious for a minute, I think I'm going with my favorite Canadian wrestler post-Redacted era with Lance T. Storm.
I didn't have the guts to do it, and God bless you for doing it. This makes me so happy.
You know, I just called the audible a second ago. I thought about who was in that skybox of our 24 possible contestants, and it wasn't going to be Meat, and it wasn't going to be Stacy Keibler. So Lance Storm gets the Duke to kick off the invasion. And it could be one of those things that is just in the back of their minds. All right, WCW is dormant, but one of their guys has our briefcase. It could be a deal where Shane has one spot for Money in the Bank for a WCW competitor, and he doesn't say who it is till the day of the show. And in fact, the match could even start without that participant. And then Storm running in from the crowd, much like he did in Calgary 2 months later, scales the ladder quickly and gets that briefcase. Now, I would have him cash in against Steve Austin May of 2001 at the Saddle Dome. Similar fashion. Runs out, super kick. You have a WCW guy holding your WWF championship, and that is how you kick off your invasion.
That's really cool.
Now, I don't know if Lance was dynamic enough to be a main event run guy in WWF, but I think it would have been... It opens up some fun matches. It opens up Lance versus Austin. It opens up Lance versus Kurt Angle in 20-minute matches. You could have some really good stuff there. I think you would have to get it off him by Survivor Series, but initially, I think it would be a lot of fun, especially, I say once you have Booker T firmly entrenched, he kind of becomes the guy, and the focus is taken off Lance a bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, 2002 WrestleMania 18 Toronto. Who is your Money in the Bank winner?
My Money in the Bank winner is the Master of the Three Eyes, Kurt Angle. So he's coming through.
Okay.
He's going to be the champ. So that means he gets rid of the Kurt Angle versus Kane match that occurred that year, which, while it was okay, it was a match. And he would cash in after Undertaker defeated Hollywood Hulk Hogan with the brand new looking Wait, my brain stopped working. Judgment Day, 2002, which was in Nashville, Tennessee.
I cheated a bit for this one.
Okay.
Even though he doesn't debut until the night after WrestleMania, he is technically on the roster. I'm going with the next big thing, Brock Lesnar.
Ooh.
What better way? Paul Heyman has been out of the scene for 5 months at this point, post Survivor Series. Have them do the old Kofi Kingston 2009 Elimination Chamber deal where they take out, let's say Maven is in the match. Brock destroys Maven, takes his spot as the new guy with Lesnar there, goading the other guys into accepting this as their reality. And then Brock is just demolishing these fools en route to getting the Money in the Bank. And I would keep everything else exactly the same. Even though he's a heel, have him call the shot. SummerSlam, I want the biggest star in wrestling history. The Rock is here and he is champion. I want him. And have him eat up The Rock, just like he did at SummerSlam.
Wow. I like it. I like that a lot.
All right, man, we're getting into the home stretch. 2003, Seattle. Who is your Money in the Bank?
This man was the second to Triple H versus Booker T. Ric Flair is my Money in the Bank winner. Similar to its inception, when I put the King Harley race in, I was thinking about who could I pull that was like more of a legend, who many people may have felt the time was behind him. And given the ridiculousness of the racism involved in the Triple H Booker T feud, Triple H still gets the win. However, while celebrating with Rick, he eats a crotch shot, and Rick hands in the belt, catches a spine buster from Arn, and the Horsemen, and not Evolution, are the group that goes forward in WWE.
I like that. I hadn't even considered Ric Flair. But if you remember, they did that great Flair versus Triple H match on Raw that May, I think it was, in Greensboro. You could even use the Money in the Bank as the reason for that.
Isn't that in the future, though? I thought that was during his retirement tour.
No, they did a one-off.
They did two in Greensboro then. Because I remember he had a great one in Greensboro during the "If You Lose, You're Retired" run.
Yeah, they did a deal where I don't think he was the sheriff yet. I think it was GM Austin told Triple H it was the night after Judgment Day. He told him he had to defend against a former world champion. And he rattled off all these names of Booker T, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels. And Triple H, being the cocky prick that he was, says, "No, you forgot one. You got my buddy right here, Nate. I'm wrestling him." And if you've never seen that Raw, man, I recommend it. It's one of the better shows of all time. Because it's the whole time Triple H is like, "Yeah, we're going to go out there, razzle dazzle," and then you lay down. And Triple H, or the Flair's getting so fired up that he's not getting the respect that they go out there and they have just a Flair's last real banger. It's amazing.
Oh, man. So good.
Yes. You can say, I have this briefcase. I want you in Flair Country, Greensboro, North Carolina next week. You and me, pal. Put her there. And then he punches him right in the nuts. My 2003 winner was the Doctor of Thugonomics, Mr. John Felix Anthony Cena.
Ooh.
He didn't have a match at WrestleMania. He was in a battle rap against a cardboard cutout of Fabulous. So we're not really missing much there. You have him as pretty much the same character he was throughout 2003. Just that young upstart begging for respect. And remember, he, in the spring of 2003, was heavily feuding with Brock Lesnar. Because Brock ate him up right before WrestleMania. So you can have that similar angle of John just wanting that respect and insisting he's going to take the title from this beast. But I see this as an unsuccessful cash-in because Brock Lesnar was a freaking murderer at this time. So I'd say you even have Brock eat a chain wrapped in a fist, have him bounce off the ropes, and still somehow manage to catch Cena in an F5 very early on in this Thugonomics reign, and have Cena go back to the drawing board and regroup and continue to improve. So that takes us to our last year of the fantasy booking. 2004, WrestleMania 20, where it all begins again. Rich, who is our last Money in the Bank winner pre this being a real thing?
I think the last is someone who, I think this would be a fun idea. He would be one half of the tag team champions, and that would be Rob Van Dam. So he still would have his fatal four-way tag match with Booker T. When, I guess in my mind,
he's just, high/crazy enough to say, hey, man, I'll also be in this ladder match too. And then he would cash in on the pre-Christmas Monday Night Raw. At that time, I believe it still is Triple H. Coming in through the crowd, 5-star frog splash, champ, run out.
I like the idea of Rob Van Dam. I'm trying to remember what was going on with him. It seems like 2004 was kind of a throwaway year for him. He ended up on SmackDown post-draft. And then I don't remember much after that. I can't remember if he was hurt or what the deal was. No, he was champion with Ray and all kinds of nonsense. Okay, it's coming back to me now.
Yeah, it was just a when in doubt, make him a tag team guy, because Triple H wanted no part in this duty in the singles burn.
None. All right, I went with the legend killer Randy Orton.
Ooh, Randall Kennedy.
I think it was his time anyway, so why not have this briefcase? Have him, instead of doing the SummerSlam coronation, have it be at Vengeance. Triple H is wrestling Benoit. He's pretty much got him beat. Eugene cost him the match. So Hunter is down because of this errant Eugene chair shot or whatever it was. Benoit's beat up. He barely gets the pin. Oh, no, never mind. Scratch that. Let's do it after the Iron Man match a few weeks later. They do the Iron Man match on Raw. Benoit and Triple H go for 60 minutes. There's all the chaos. Benoit fights Batista and Triple H away in the post-match. Boom, come from behind, RKO, 1, 2, 3. You have your new champion, and they can do their rematch at SummerSlam. Now, in my world, I wouldn't do that turn immediately. I think that was just silly having Triple H and the boys turn on him immediately after winning the title. I would build that and do that somewhere down the road, probably WrestleMania.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, Rich, this has been a lot of fun, man. Anything you want to plug before we go?
No, I would just say definitely my deep dive show every Saturday on the PW Torch Daily Cast lineup of shows every week. Each day is a different host with a different subject, different flavor. I try to dive in on an hour worth of God knows what each week, try to go as deep as we can in that time with callers, hosts, etc. And, of course, East Coast Cast, if you go to Twitter, at East Coast Cast or at Rich_Fan, like the appliance with an extra N, and you can find more information about either.
All right, guys, I definitely recommend checking out PW Torch for that vital content, man. There are archives going back to 1987. So by all means, if you're a fan of history, check that out. You can follow me at Songs with Steve on Twitter. My account is locked, but if you give me a follow, I'll probably let you in. I'm not all that secretive of a guy. You can follow the Songs with Friends Twitter account at PTBN_songs. And if you haven't checked out Songs with Friends, I highly recommend you do that. About every other week, myself and Kelly, we deep dive song lyrics, get into the ridiculous, the touching, the heartwarming, or sometimes just bold slander and accusations against the people we grew up listening to. For Rich, I am Steve. Thanks for checking us out. We will try to do better next time.